We have 19 people, 20 people. You might put the mic closer to you now.
Will others be able to watch the meeting?
Yeah.
Are you ready? Okay.
We are ready.
All right. Good morning, church family. Today's our annual congregational meeting, and as you know, this is a different time, and so all of this is virtually. So bear with us as we try to make this as understandable and as easy as possible. You have or should have received an email. Was it yesterday, Travis?
It was a few days ago.
This last week that would have had the attachments of the proposed budget, would have had the ballot that you could send or email back in for voting. And if you haven't voted, I would encourage you to do that now. As soon as we are through the voting discussion, which is really going to be for us to list who's up for the board, the voting will be concluded. Chris Ryder is going to be tallying the votes on her computer at home, and then she will call in and give us the results, and I will announce that later on. But if you haven't voted, want to vote, please do that now so that we can get the votes tallied.
And the link is posted in the comments section to vote.
Okay, Travis said the link is posted in the comments section. And before we conduct the meeting, I just also want to let you know that while normally we follow the Robert's Rules of Order as closely as possible, in our board meetings and in this meeting and all, we will be suspending many of those rules because we're doing this virtually. I don't think Robert's rules ever anticipated this. So if there is anything that happens in the meeting that needs to be then by voice vote, we will ratify it at another time. We will go ahead and assume it's passed because we don't have anybody in person to be able to raise their hand, have motions or seconds or anything like that. We will have it passed for this meeting, and then the next in-person congregational meeting we will ratify any of those decisions that have to be made today. And the final little announcement before we actually open the meeting is that the reopening committee, you would have heard this if you were at the worship service 10, 15 minutes ago, but the reopening committee did meet on Thursday, and they will be reporting tomorrow night at the board meeting what they concluded, if they have recommendations, and then we will make sure that this is communicated to you all. This is an ongoing problem with the pandemic. We have to keep reevaluating, modifying, changing what we do, but that's the most important thing, is so that we are safe during these times. So I will officially open the meeting called to order. I've already mentioned the suspension of the rules of Robert's Rules of Order. The first order of business is the approval of minutes of last November 10th, 2019. Those were sent to you, as we just mentioned, and while we can't have a hand vote or anything, or voice vote here, we are going to have these minutes stand as written, but these will be ratified at the next in-person congregational meeting. If you have any corrections or changes, and you haven't had a chance to communicate this before today, if you would please let us know. We can then, at the time we ratify those in the future, we can modify and make the appropriate changes. The next order of business is the election of the 2021 official board trustees and youth representatives. Again, those would have been submitted to you via a ballot that came with email, and then you click to send it back in. But I want to remind you, if you don't have that in front of you, who the board has proposed as next year's official board trustees and youth representatives. Chair is me, Sally Rowley, Vice Chair Larry Coase, Treasurer David Lester, Financial Secretary Doug Reed, Recording Secretary Ann Burnett, Past Chair Rick Alton, Trustees Arnie Becker, Joe Sullivan, Chris Ledlow, Members at Large Terry Hendrickson, Kelly Paul Holstein, Deb Dillman, and Youth Representative Hannah and/or Grace Pratt. I would note, I'm sure you all noted, that most of those names are the same officers and other members of the board from last year. During our nominating committee process, we believed that because of the pandemic, a consistency in the board and administrative offices would be best to keep consistent from last year. It's not as though we got our feet on the ground immediately and had umpteen kinds of activities because we were shut down so soon with the pandemic. We know that other churches in our denomination are also doing this. It's for the consistency and hopefully to make an easy transition as we open back up and return to a semblance of normal. So again, this is the election time, and the voting is going to end, the tallying is going to begin. I'm going to now turn over the meeting to Gary Fox. As you hopefully have in your email, there is a proposed 2021 budget. And Gary is going to try to virtually explain, as he has done in person, and more power to you, Gary. This is a new sort of event here online.
Well, the budget this year is very similar to what we've done in the past several years. I hope you do have a copy of it that you can follow along. I will try to help guide you through it a little bit. I've done some changes this year that I hope simplify it just a little bit, make it a little easier to follow. The particular column that you want, this is our recommended, the budget proposed by the Stewardship and Finance Committee was presented to the board at their October meeting, and the board approved this budget and then forwarded to you with their recommendation that this should be our 2021 budget. The center column that's in white, mostly in white, is the recommended 2021 budget. On either side of it is the 2021 budget, and then our estimate of what the actual expenditures will be for 2020. And then in the yellow outside those, the 2019 budget and the 2019 actual expenditures. So you get a good idea there of how we compare to previous budgets. We believe that things are going well, that we have the right priorities and the right ways to invest our talents and our resources here. So it's very similar to what it's been in those previous years. I further went in and color-coded changes from last year. In green and yellow. In receipts, green being good in both cases, but in receipts that means some additional money coming into the budget, and in expenditures, an increase in expenditures is in yellow because that impacts our budget. We need to find more money, and if it's green, it means it's a reduction from what was shown for that particular line item. So I hope that's somewhat helpful to you. Our process was pretty much the same as we've used in the past, in that the Stewardship Finance Committee tracks giving all during the year, and giving has remained strong this year. So we believe that it's appropriate to estimate that next year's general giving will be a little bit more than we did this year, because this year is a little better than the previous year. And so we have $217,000 there. Our other kind of normal amounts of rental use, interest, special offerings, miscellaneous income is estimated to be about the same as they have been the last couple of years, which would give us a total of $224,000. And as you can see, and I'll explain a little later, our expenditures came to more than that. And so we've adjusted because some of the additional expenditures, many of them are COVID related. We felt that it was appropriate to take $3,515 from the loan, which now should be a grant that we received from the CARES Act, in particular the Payroll Protection Program funding, that $25,000 we got, and are now in our reserve to take $3,515 from there to give us a balanced budget. On the expenditure side, first in administration, well, let me go maybe to the back side of it, which is where the details are. And kind of in order of importance, we felt it was really important this year to, again, with all the additional expenses people may have, to provide at least cost of living adjustments for all of our employees. That's our pastors, as well as music department and cleaning staff, all of them, to get approximately a 2% increase there. We do have some additional expenses for payroll software and other things related to how we have to track things and report for COVID. course, our Social Security and Medicare parts that we pay go up with those salaries. And then we have a new budget here of a little over $1,500, the federal unemployment tax that's works actually through the state of Iowa. In the past years has been zero, but this year, because they've been paying out so much that for the next year, our treasurer has advised us that this is going to go up to about a 6% tax on those salaries, so that's some additional $1,500. And then so that makes up a significant part of our increase in expenditures from last year, about $158,000 to this year, about $165,000. And then those are put back through into each of the various categories. And I would urge you, if you have the budget information, to take a look at our narrative budget, because rather than be just a whole page full of numbers, it explains how we use the budget, the resources that we have to do our programming. That's really God's work here in our church. First, we do have the administrative expenses. Most of that is about the same as before. We do have some savings. We switched over, made a nice improvement on our internet service, going from the phone company, CenturyLink. I've kind of purged that name from ours because we really had trouble with them lately, but we've had switched over to MediaCom about a month ago, and now we have greatly improved internet service, and it's also somewhat cheaper, so we think we can save $500 there in administrative costs and get better service. So that's always a good thing. Our online giving expense is a new item. We've been having that expense, but we haven't had a particular line item budget, so we've added that in there to just, we know that's going to continue. So there's an $1,100 increase, and that gives us generally the total that we have in that category administration. For property expenses, they're roughly the same as they have been. A little bit of an increase for insurance. And some other changes a little bit. For our elevator maintenance contract is just a little cheaper than we expected. But again, those expenses are just up a few $100s from last year. In worship, again, with increased expenses on personnel, we did a couple of decreases on some bells and the music for bells and chimes. A little decrease there because we just haven't been using them because we haven't been able to meet and have that program. And then we did balance that out with an increase in worship resources. But a lot of that is COVID-related things, as some additional software and programs and things we need to have to be able to produce the worship service live stream. Christian Ed is no major changes there, roughly the same. Our youth committee is about the same as last year. Evangelism and membership, no significant changes there. And finding outreach, there's a little bit of a change there because we anticipate our giving being up a little bit. That it will be adjusted because we give 10% of our last year's giving, our expected last year's giving, included in our outreach. So it brings our total for recommended expenses to $227,000, $227,515. And as I mentioned, that with the additional $3,315, that is also our recommended income or receipts for 2021. So again, in kind of summary of it, it's a very similar budget to what we've previously used, and we believe we will have the resources this coming year. You've done such a wonderful job of continuing to support this church financially so that we can carry on with this year. We look for much brighter days next year. Vaccines are coming along. We certainly hope and pray that they will get us to where we can have church resume worshiping in here. We can all get together and share our love. And this is the budget that we propose and recommend to you that we would use to do all of the mission work and the programs that we do here. So with that, if you haven't voted yet.
We have a question.
We do have a question. Wonderful.
From Nick Wood, he says the 2020 estimated receipts are lower than 2019 receipts. While encouraging that receipts have stayed as high as they have, do we believe that a 3% increase in receipts is attainable in 2021? Personally, I have some concerns about this increase given the continued instability due to COVID.
Well, my numbers show that our estimate for 2020, oh, I see where you are showing at the bottom, the total receipts is a little bit higher. We did have higher interest because we had quite a bit of money from our capital campaign that was parked in the account and earning interest at the bank during 2019, and for the most part in 2020 we don't have as much of that. So we think that interest income will be down, but our actual general fund giving is higher a little bit, estimated for 2015 than it was in 2019 of $215,000 is a little bit higher than it was in 2019. Did I say 2020 was a little higher than 2019? That's what I meant to say. So really we do think that we have, that's a very reasonable thing. We don't know for sure that that will happen. We, depending on circumstances this coming year, but this year the giving has held up very strongly and we're sure hopeful. We do have substantial reserves. I think it's about $56,000 now, counting the CARE funding that's included in those reserves, that we're taking $3,500 there. So if our giving falls a little bit short, we certainly have resources to make that happen. And in the past, we've done some spatial fundraising things to help supplement our income if we need to do that, and there are some opportunities for that. So we think that it is, it's kind of a hold in place thing, but we certainly want to give some those cost of living adjustments, but we think that we'll be in pretty good shape on the income side. So thanks for your question. I hope that answers it. Any other questions? If not, and if you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to hit the vote button on the link, website, whatever it is, and you can vote in favor of, or if you don't appreciate the budget line, you can vote in opposition to. So make sure you vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks to your committee and all. You're doing an exceptional job and a lot of work on our finances and our budgets and keeping us up to date. And we couldn't do it without you, plus this year was even more important. Thanks so much. Okay, now, hopefully you've all voted, because the tallies will be coming in. And this is the time that we usually have, and traditionally we have, a report by the board chair. And I can attest to last year that it's usually, oh, these are all wonderful things we did this year. And we start listing them in all. Well, this is not a traditional year. And this is not a traditional report from your chair. The church has been guided over the years by the goals of welcoming all and sharing our faith through worship, fellowship, service, and education. And in Marty's sermon during worship, she talked about the journey. And this is really the journey that we have as a denomination and as a church for years. That was no different this year. That part didn't change. And it was no different even in the face of unimaginable challenges during this pandemic. Over the years, our goals have remained our guiding principles, but our ways of approaching and reaching those goals have changed with the changes of our church and members' needs and the needs of our community and the world. This year was no different, with challenges and changes brought on by a global pandemic. We continue to strive to meet these goals this year and will continue to work towards those goals in the future as we face new challenges and changes to our worship, our outreach, fellowship, and education. I read an article on the church post-pandemic last week. The article started out with a quote from Mark Twain, and I think some of you have heard this before. The rumors of my death are grossly exaggerated. I couldn't quit thinking about that quote this week as it reflected on the last 12 months of the life of this church. I remembered comments made by Christian friends that we would lose members if we did not worship in person, that our finances would suffer and may even close the church, and that people would not worship online. These were understandable fears, and they crossed my mind as well as those who made those comments to me during the initial shock of closing of businesses and the church. Church family, with confidence, I can report that none of those fears have materialized. Our church is strong and vital. Our finances are sound, as you heard Gary talk about that, as you continue to support the work of our church with your giving. Our fellowship continues, although in different forms, such as virtually in our group Facebook, where we share needs and pray for those in these troubling times. We've had virtual and in-person Tuesday coffees in the parking lot and our fellowship hall when we could, with social distancing. And our pastors have continually tried new ways of keeping us connected, such as their drive-in pastor visits. We are a caring community, and limiting our in-person contact has not changed that. We have found new and satisfying ways to continue caring for others and ourselves. We continue our service outside the walls of the church building through programs such as the mobile food pantry with the social distancing, and allowing farmers market to have a home in our parking lot to share with our community. We continue our education with book reviews online and virtual and safe in-person youth activities. And our online worship has been exceptional. We have upgraded our internet and equipment to allow us to live stream from the sanctuary. Church members and those from near and far, who we only know by their login names, are enthusiastic about our worship services. As I close, I leave you with a few thoughts about the future of our church in a post-pandemic world. Make no mistake, to be viable and effective in the coming years, we will need to navigate a new normal. And that will include many cultural changes and acceptance of new ways of sharing our message and providing service outside of our church building. Being the church will be more important than going to church. We must continue to stretch our comfort zone by balancing our inward focus and our outward focus activities. We will continue to provide a hybrid model for participation. Virtual participation has brought many back to worship who were unable to attend in person even before the pandemic. We will be moving to more small group gatherings and surprising partnerships. These are just a few of how we will grow and thrive in the future. Do not despair that church is, quote, not like it used to be, unquote. Envelop your arms around new ideas and opportunities for worship and sharing our faith through which our eyes are being opened. I'm excited about where our church is going. I challenge you to come along with me and share in the excitement of our future. Do we have now any report on the voting?
Tell them it's closed, and then we'll get that.
Pardon?
Tell them voting is closed.
Okay, voting is closed, and we will get the numbers here in a few minutes. Waiting on that voting, I think I will just share with you what I was going to say during if there was any other business. Before adjourning, I wanted to share one announcement concerning our response to the current and future COVID-19 pandemic. I think I mentioned at the very beginning, but, and this is the same as if you had participated in worship. This was the same information we gave then. That the cases, as you know, in Warren County, the state of Iowa, and across our nation are at the highest since the beginning of the pandemic. The board continues to monitor the situation and how to address these challenging times while continuing to worship and provide a caring faith community. 2 weeks ago, the reopening committee suspended all in-person worship or activities within the building when the cases rose almost overnight to frightening levels. This was disappointing. We had so looked forward to and enjoyed the few weeks that we were able to worship in the church, social distance, and we believed and continue to believe that we had done an awesome job in doing that. But this was out of our control in this building. It is the world we live in. So the reopening committee met again on Thursday, and they have a report and recommendations that will go to the board tomorrow night. We'll provide an update to all of the church after the board meets, and we'll let you know if there's any changes to policies or procedures. We will continue to monitor very carefully and address any changes that are necessary in our policies and procedures to protect our church family. That is our main concern during these times. I see Travis over there. Whoa, it looks like he's coming. I feel like I'm an official.
And the Oscar goes to.
And yeah, here we go. All right. For the budget, there were 63 yeses and 5 noes. So the proposed budget has passed this meeting. For the candidates of the official board, trustees, and youth representatives, all carried a majority. There were 68 total votes in all of this meeting. So with that, we are welcoming the continuing a new board, and we are excited to be able to have a budget that we can work with and continue the wonderful work of this church. We can do it, we will do it. There will be no other business before this congregational meeting. I declare that it is adjourned, and Marty is going to give us a prayer.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for everyone who participated. Let us go to God in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for this building that we get to use all of our many talents in and out of. Thank you for this church, for the fact that our faith in you, our faith in love and hope and peace and light brings us together. Allow us to use all of our talents, all of our resources, investing in people, your people, so that we can be love and light and goodness in this world, so that we can bring glory and honor to you in all that we do. Bless this church, bless the people in this community. May we love and serve you in all of our days. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. And that's it. Thank you all.
Look, we need the organ.
Very good.